The transport ship shuddered as it docked with Arcturus Prime, the massive space station that housed the Galactic Military Academy. Minho pressed his hand against the cold window and stared at the structure floating in the darkness. It looked like a giant metal flower with 8 petals, each one glowing with lights from 1,000 windows. Somewhere in there, he would spend the next 3 years training alongside the best warriors from across the galaxy. He was the first human to be accepted into the academy in almost 30 years. The docking tunnel connected with a hiss of pressurizing air. Minho grabbed his single bag and stepped through the door. The station's artificial gravity felt heavier than Earth's, probably set to accommodate the larger alien species. His boots thudded against the metal floor as he followed the signs toward the Cadet Processing Center. Other recruits moved through the corridors around him. Most of them were twice his size. A group of Kryloks walked past, their scales gleaming under the station lights. They looked like enormous lizards standing on 2 legs with muscles that bulged beneath their natural armor plating. One of them glanced at Minho and made a clicking sound that might have been laughter. At the processing center, a holographic attendant directed him to Station 7. Behind the desk sat a Vethran, one of the insect-like species from the Outer Rim. Its multifaceted eyes reflected Minho's image 100 times over. "Name?" the Vethran asked, its mandibles clicking as it spoke. "Cadet Minho. From Earth." The Vethran's antennae twitched. "The human. Yes, we were informed you would arrive here." It pushed a datapad across the desk. "Your quarters assignment, training schedule, and academy regulations. Classes begin at 0600 tomorrow. Do not be late." Minho took the pad and nodded his thanks. As he turned to leave, he heard the Vethran mutter something to another worker. The translator in his ear caught the words, "Won't last a month." His quarters were in the lower ring of the station, a small room with a bed, desk, and personal storage unit. It was clean and functional, nothing more. Minho unpacked his few belongings and lay down on the bed, staring at the ceiling. Back on Earth, his friends from the Special Forces had thrown him a going-away party. They had joked about him becoming an intergalactic hero. None of them really believed humans belonged among the elite alien warriors. Neither did the aliens, apparently. But Minho had something to prove. Not just for himself, but for his sister's memory. She had died 5 years ago when their settlement's life support systems failed. The authorities had ignored warnings, too busy with politics to fix critical infrastructure. That day, Minho had learned that being overlooked could be deadly. He had promised himself he would never be overlooked again, and neither would humanity. The next morning, Minho arrived at the main training hall early. The space was enormous, with a ceiling that stretched up at least 50 meters. Different sections had different gravity settings, temperature zones, and terrain types. It was designed to simulate combat conditions from 100 different worlds. 50 other cadets were already assembled, standing in neat rows. Minho found a spot at the back and stood at attention. He was the smallest person in the room by a significant margin. Even the other humanoid species were taller and broader than him. A door at the front of the hall opened and Instructor Velthar entered. He was a massive Krylox nearly 3 meters tall with dark green scales and scars crossing his face and arms. His eyes swept across the assembled cadets and stopped on Minho. "Cadets," Velthar's voice rumbled like distant thunder. "You are here because your governments believe you are the finest warriors your species can produce. Over the next 3 years we will determine if they were correct." He began pacing along the front row. "Most of you will fail. Some will quit. A few will be injured badly enough to be sent home. But those who remain will become officers in the Galactic Defense Force, protectors of 1,000 worlds." He stopped pacing and looked directly at Minho again. "We have a human among us this year. A rare occurrence. Humans are fragile creatures. Thin skin, weak bones, no natural defenses." Several cadets turned to look at Minho. "But they earned their seat at this academy through political agreements, so we will train them as we train everyone else. If they break, they break." Minho kept his face neutral, but his jaw tightened. He had expected this. Humans were seen as the weak link, the soft species that only survived because they were clever enough to build weapons and hide behind technology. The first training exercise was a combat simulation. Cadets were paired off randomly. Minho's partner was a Solmare, one of the crystalline beings whose bodies were partially composed of living mineral. The Solmare's name was Keth, and he looked down at Minho with what might have been pity. "Try not to get hurt. Keth said as they entered the simulation ring. The fight lasted 45 seconds. Keth was slow but incredibly strong. Minho used speed and technique, dodging the heavy strikes and landing precise hits on joints and pressure points. When the simulation ended with Minho declared the winner, Keth looked surprised. "You are faster than I expected," the Solmari admitted. Over the next week, Minho performed adequately in most exercises. He was not the best in physical strength or endurance, but he was tactical and adaptable. He studied his opponents, learned their patterns, and found ways to compensate for his physical disadvantages. Some instructors seemed impressed. Others, like Velthar, remained skeptical. On the 8th day, Minho was eating lunch alone in the cadet mess hall when someone sat down across from him. It was a female human, the first he had seen since arriving at the station. "You must be Minho," she said, extending her hand. "I am Jiyeon, Engineering Division. I arrived last month." Minho shook her hand, relieved to see another human. "I did not know anyone else from Earth was here." "There are only 3 of us now," Jiyeon said. "The third is in medical sciences. We humans have to stick together in this place." She glanced around the mess hall. "They do not respect us yet, but they will." That afternoon, everything changed. During a training exercise, Minho witnessed a large Krylox cadet named Rixal deliberately strike a smaller veteran with excessive force. The veteran went down hard, chittering in pain. Rixal stood over him, laughing. Minho stepped forward. That was unnecessary. The hall went quiet. Rixal turned slowly, his yellow eyes focusing on Minho. "What did you say, little human?" "I said it was unnecessary." The match was over. "You hit him after the bell." Rixal moved closer, towering over Minho. "And what do you plan to do about it?" Minho held his ground. "Nothing right now, but I am watching you." For a moment it seemed like Rixal might attack. Then he laughed, a harsh barking sound. "You have spirit, Glassling. I like that." He leaned down until his snout was centimeters from Minho's face. "The proving trials are in 2 weeks. I challenge you to a match. Let us see how much spirit you have when your fragile bones are breaking." According to Academy regulations, challenges issued during training could not be refused without dishonor. Refusal meant possible expulsion and disgrace to one's entire species. Minho met Rixal's eyes. "I accept." The Krylox grinned, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Excellent. This will be entertaining." As Rixal walked away, Jiyeon appeared at Minho's side. "Are you insane? He is ranked 3rd in combat efficiency. He could kill you." Minho watched Rixal leave the hall surrounded by his supporters. "Maybe, but I did not come here to be quiet and invisible." None of us did. That night, lying in his quarters, Minho stared at the picture of his sister he kept by his bed. She had always believed humans were just as capable as any other species. She had died because people with power did not think human lives mattered enough to fix a broken air system. Minho would fight Rixal. He would probably lose, maybe even get seriously hurt. But every alien watching would remember that a human did not back down. Sometimes the fight itself mattered more than winning. He had 2 weeks to prepare. The training hall became Minho's second home over the next week. He arrived before dawn and stayed after most other cadets had left. The combat simulators ran through hundreds of scenarios, each one designed to test different aspects of fighting ability. Minho focused on Krylox opponents, learning their movement patterns and weak points. Jiyeon helped him every evening, pulling up data files on Krylox anatomy and combat techniques. They sat in the station's library, surrounded by holographic displays showing muscle structures and reaction speeds. "Their scales are thickest on the back and shoulders," Jiyeon explained, highlighting areas on a rotating 3D model, "but the joints have less protection. Here, here, and here." She pointed to the elbows, knees, and neck. "If you can get inside his reach, you might have a chance." Minho studied the information carefully. "What about his claws?" "Sharp enough to cut through most materials." "Do not let him grab you." Jiyeon closed the display and looked at him seriously. "Minho, you can still withdraw from the challenge. There is a medical exemption clause. You could claim you need more time to adapt to station gravity." "That would be a lie. It would keep you alive." Minho shook his head. "Every alien here already thinks humans do not belong. If I quit now, it confirms what they believe. We are not just representing ourselves, Jiyeon. We are representing Earth." She sighed but did not argue further. Instead, she pulled up combat footage from previous proving trials. They watched Rixal fight, analyzing his techniques until late into the night. Word of the challenge spread through the academy. Other cadets began watching Minho's training sessions, making bets on how quickly he would lose. The odds were 50-1 against him. Some aliens seemed curious about how a human would perform. Most just wanted to see if he would survive. Instructor Veltar called Minho to his office 3 days before the match. "You should withdraw," the Krylok said without preamble. "Rixal is an experienced fighter. You have been here less than 2 weeks. This is not cowardice. This is common sense. With respect, instructor, I cannot withdraw." Velthar's tail lashed in frustration. "Cannot or will not?" "Both." The instructor studied him for a long moment. "Your species is stubborn. Perhaps that is why you survived long enough to reach the stars." He turned to look out the window at the blackness of space. "Very well. But understand this, human. If you die in that ring, it will cause political problems. Your government will complain. There will be investigations. It would be easier for everyone if you simply yielded." "I understand, sir. I do not think you do. But you will." 1 week before the proving trials, all cadets participated in a mandatory zero-gravity rescue drill. The exercise took place in one of the station's cargo bays, a massive space currently depressurized and set to zero gravity. Cadets wore full environment suits and worked in teams to rescue dummy casualties from a simulated shipwreck. Minho was assigned to Team 7 with 4 other cadets, including 2 veterans named Thess and Krill. They floated into the cargo bay, using small thrusters on their suits to navigate through the debris field. Pieces of hull plating, cargo containers, and twisted metal created a dangerous maze. "Team 7, your objective is Sector 4. The instructor's voice crackled over the radio. "You have 15 minutes. Begin." The team moved carefully through the wreckage. Minho's smaller size was actually an advantage here, allowing him to slip through gaps that larger aliens had to move around. He reached the first casualty dummy and began securing it to a rescue line. That was when the accident happened. A structural failure in the simulation rig caused one of the large cargo containers to break free from its moorings. The container, massing several tons, began tumbling through the zero-gravity environment. Its sharp edges sliced through smaller debris, creating a cascade of flying metal fragments. "All teams, emergency abort," the instructor shouted. "Exit the bay immediately." Cadets scrambled for the exits, but the tumbling container was moving fast. Minho saw it heading straight for Thess and Krill. The 2 veterans were tangled in a piece of netting, struggling to free themselves. There was no time to think. Minho fired his thrusters at maximum power, rocketing toward the 2 aliens. He hit them hard, pushing them out of the container's path. They spun away toward safety, but Minho's momentum carried him directly into the danger zone. He tried to adjust his trajectory, but a secondary piece of debris struck his thruster pack, damaging it. He tumbled helplessly as the massive container bore down on him. At the last second, he managed to grab a piece of hull plating to change direction. It was not enough. A large metal beam, part of the container's support structure, caught him across the chest. The impact drove him backward into a bulkhead with crushing force. Even through the environment suit, the pain was immediate and overwhelming. Emergency sirens filled the bay as pressurization began. Medical teams were already suiting up in the airlock. Minho floated limply, held in place only by the beam that had struck him. His vision swam with dark spots. The rescue team reached him within minutes. They carefully extracted him from the debris and rushed him to the medical bay. Through the haze of pain, Minho could hear voices discussing his condition in urgent tones. In the medical bay, Dr. Zenth, a veteran physician, ran a full-body scan. The results appeared on a display above the bed, showing Minho's skeleton and organs in bright detail. 3 broken ribs, Dr. Zenth announced, pointing at the scan. "Here, here, and here." The sternum is cracked, severe bruising across the entire chest cavity. Fortunate that nothing punctured the lung. Minho tried to sit up but gasped at the pain. "Even breathing hurt. Do not move," the doctor ordered. For most species, this would heal in 3 to 5 days with standard treatments. But human bones heal much slower. You will need at least 6 weeks of recovery, possibly longer. 6 weeks. The proving trials were in 7 days. Gian arrived at the medical bay within the hour, her face pale. "I heard what happened. You saved Thess and Krill. Are they all right?" "Yes, minor injuries only, thanks to you." She pulled up a chair beside the bed. "Minho, you have to withdraw from the challenge now." "No one would question it. You are legitimately injured." Before Minho could respond, the medical bay doors opened again. Rixal entered, followed by 3 other Krylox cadets. They approached the bed and Rixal looked down at the scan results. "Broken ribs," he said, his voice neutral. "This is unfortunate." One of his companions, a smaller Krylox, laughed. "Unfortunate? This is perfect. The human has an honorable excuse to withdraw. No shame in yielding when injured." Rixal nodded slowly. "Yes, the match is cancelled. I will inform the administration." "No," Minho said. Everyone turned to look at him. "The match is not cancelled." "I will fight." Rixal's eyes narrowed. "You cannot fight with broken ribs. You would be at an extreme disadvantage." "I know. You could be seriously injured permanently." "I know that too." Dr. Zenth stepped forward. "I cannot allow this. It is medically irresponsible. Another impact to the chest could puncture a lung or cause fatal internal bleeding." Minho looked at the doctor, then at Rixal, then at Ji-Yeon. "I am not withdrawing." Ji-Yeon grabbed his arm. "Please, Minho, this is insane. Your sister would not want you to die for pride." The mention of his sister made Minho close his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, his voice was steady. "This is not about pride. If I withdraw now, every human who comes after me will carry that weight. Every alien will remember that when things got hard, the human quit. I cannot let that happen." Rixal studied him for a long moment. Something shifted in the Krylox's expression, an emotion difficult to read. "You are either very brave or very foolish, human." "Probably both." The Krylox warrior turned to leave, then paused at the door. 7 days. Heal as much as you can." He left without another word. Dr. Zenth shook his head. "I will do what I can, but human physiology limits my options. I can accelerate bone growth slightly and reduce inflammation. Pain suppressants are available, but they will dull your reflexes. No pain suppressants. That is extremely unwise. I need to stay sharp." Over the next 6 days, Minho remained in medical bay. The treatments helped, but the progress was slow. By the 6th day, he could stand and walk without gasping. But any sudden movement sent sharp pains through his chest. The ribs were healing, but still fragile. Ji-Yeon visited every day, bringing him updates from the academy. The betting pools had shifted. Some aliens were now betting on how long Minho would last before yielding. Others bet he would not show up at all. On the morning of the 7th day, Minho dressed in his training uniform. Each movement was careful and measured. Ji-Yeon helped him wrap his chest in support bandages, but they both knew it would not be enough protection. "You can still change your mind," she said quietly. Minho looked at himself in the mirror. He looked thinner than a week ago, and there were dark circles under his eyes. But his gaze was steady. "Let us go." They walked together toward the main training hall where the proving trials would take place. Every step reminded Minho of his broken ribs, but he kept walking. The main training hall had been transformed for the proving trials. Temporary seating surrounded a large circular combat platform, and nearly every cadet in the academy had gathered to watch. The betting terminals near the entrance were doing active business. Minho could see the odds displayed on a screen. Rixal favored at 50-1. Ji-Yeon secured a spot in the front row carrying a small medical kit. She caught Minho's eye and gave him a slight nod. Her face was tight with worry. In another section, Thess sat with a group of veteran cadets. She saw Minho looking and raised one of her clawed hands in acknowledgement. Krill, sitting beside her, did the same. The 2 aliens he had saved in the accident. Commander Kale, the Academy's headmaster, stood at the center of the platform. His crystalline body refracted the overhead lights into rainbow patterns. His voice, when he spoke, resonated through the hall without need for amplification. "Today we witness a proving trial between Cadet Rixal of Krylox Prime and Cadet Minho of Earth. The rules are standard. Combat continues until submission, incapacitation, or yield. Natural biological advantages are permitted. Lethal force is not." He paused. "Both combatants have been informed of these rules and accept them." Minho walked onto the platform. Every eye in the hall followed him. He could feel them judging, measuring, doubting. His ribs ached with each breath, but he kept his face calm. Rixal approached from the opposite side. The Krylox moved with the confidence of someone who had never lost a fight. His scales gleamed under the lights and his claws flexed unconsciously. When he reached the center, he looked down at Minho. "Last chance to withdraw, human?" "Not going to happen." Something flickered in Rixal's eyes. "Then let us begin." They moved to opposite sides of the platform. Commander Kale raised one crystalline hand. Combatants ready? Both fighters assumed their stances. Begin. Rixal moved immediately, closing the distance with frightening speed. His strategy was obvious: target the injured ribs and end the fight quickly. He came in with a sweeping claw strike aimed at Minho's left side. Minho twisted away, feeling the claws pass centimeters from his chest. The movement sent pain shooting through his ribs, but he could not afford to show it. He backpedaled, keeping distance between them. Rixal pressed forward, using his longer reach to control the space. He threw a combination of strikes, each one designed to herd Minho into a corner. The human dodged and weaved, burning energy to stay out of reach. You cannot run forever, Rixal said. Minho did not waste breath responding. He was already breathing harder than normal. Each inhale a sharp reminder of his injury. Sweat began to form on his forehead. The Krylox lunged again, this time feinting high before dropping into a leg sweep. Minho jumped over it, but the landing jarred his ribs. A flash of pain crossed his face before he could stop it. Rixal saw it. His eyes narrowed and he adjusted his approach, focusing entirely on body strikes. He came in with a straight punch aimed at Minho's sternum. Minho could not dodge in time. He brought his arms up to block, absorbing the impact on his forearms. The force still drove him backward, and the shock traveled through his body to his injured chest. He gasped despite himself. The crowd murmured. They could see Minho was already hurt. Yield, Rixal said. There is no shame in it. Minho steadied himself and raised his hands again. No, the fight continued. Rixal landed several more hits, none of them clean, but all of them taking their toll. Minho managed a few strikes of his own, targeting the softer areas around Rixal's joints. But they were not enough to slow the larger fighter down. 3 minutes into the match, Rixal got through Minho's guard with a glancing blow to his side. The impact hit directly over the broken ribs. Minho's vision went white with pain. He staggered backward, one hand instinctively moving to protect his injured side. The hall went quiet. Everyone expected Minho to fall or yield. He did neither. He straightened slowly, breathing in short, careful gasps, and raised his guard again. In the stands, a Solmar cadet turned to his companion. Why does he not yield? He is clearly in agony. I do not know, the companion replied, but I have never seen anything like this. Rixal hesitated for the first time. He looked at Minho's face and saw something that made him pause. The human's eyes were completely focused, burning with a determination that seemed disconnected from his body's obvious pain. What are you? Rixal asked quietly. Minho's response was barely audible. Stubborn. The Krylox's mandibles clicked in what might have been respect or confusion. Then he attacked again, more aggressively now, trying to force the end of the fight. He threw a combination that should have overwhelmed any opponent. But Minho was not fighting the same way anymore. Something had shifted. Instead of purely defensive movements, he began to counter. When Rixal threw a high strike, Minho ducked under it and drove an elbow into the Krylox's exposed side. When Rixal swept low, Minho jumped and used the Krylox's own back as a springboard to create distance. Every move cost him. The impacts, the twisting, the rapid breathing. All of it drove spikes of pain through his chest. Blood began to seep through his training uniform from where the support bandages had rubbed against healing wounds. But he did not stop. Ji-yeon, watching from the front row, had tears on her face. Stop, she whispered. Please stop. 5 minutes into the match. Most proving trials lasted less than 3 minutes. Minho was still standing, still fighting. His movements were slower now, less precise, but he refused to go down. Rixal was frustrated. He had never fought anyone who would not stay down. The human should have yielded by now. Any reasonable opponent would have. But Minho kept coming back, kept raising his guard, kept fighting. You are going to die, you foolish human, Rixal growled. Minho's response came between painful breaths. Breaking and yielding are not the same thing. That statement rippled through the crowd. Cadets began to lean forward in their seats. They were witnessing something unusual, something none of them had seen before. This was not about skill or strength anymore. This was something else entirely. Rixal charged forward with his most powerful attack, a leaping strike designed to end the fight. He launched himself into the air, claws extended, aiming to drive Minho into the ground. Every tactical instructor would have told Minho to dodge. It was the smart move, the safe move. But dodging would only delay the inevitable. Minho's body was failing. He could feel it. If he wanted any chance of winning, he had to do something unexpected. So he stepped forward into the attack. Rixal's eyes widened in shock. The human was not trying to avoid the strike. He was accepting it. Minho caught Rixal in midair, using the Krylox's own momentum against him. The impact was enormous. Minho's ribs screamed in protest. He felt something crack further inside his chest. But he held on, wrapping his arms around Rixal and twisting as they fell. Minho woke up in the medical bay 3 days later. The first thing he noticed was that breathing no longer felt like being stabbed. The second thing he noticed was that he was not alone. Ji-yeon sat in a chair beside his bed, her head resting on her arms, asleep. He tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain flared through his chest, though much less severe than before. Ji-yeon's eyes snapped open at the sound of his movement. "Do not move, you stubborn fool." She stood quickly and adjusted his bed so he could sit up without straining. "How do you feel?" "Like I was hit by a cargo container." "That is accurate." She poured water into a cup and handed it to him. "You have been unconscious for 3 days. Dr. Zenth says your lung is repaired, but you still have significant healing to do. You are going to be in medical bay for at least 2 weeks. Minho drank the water slowly. His throat was dry. "What happened after the fight?" Ji-yeon's expression changed. Something shifted in her eyes. "Everything changed, Minho, everything." Before she could explain, the medical bay doors opened. Commander Kale entered, his crystalline form reflecting the sterile lights. He approached Minho's bed and stood silently for a moment, as if choosing his words carefully. "Cadet Minho, I have served in the Galactic Defense Force for 42 cycles. I have witnessed combat in 17 different systems. I have seen acts of extraordinary courage and skill." He paused. "What you did was the most foolish and most honorable thing I have witnessed in my entire career." "I did not mean to cause problems, sir." "Problems?" Kale's voice carried a tone that might have been amusement. "You have caused significant problems, but not the kind you imagine." He gestured toward the door. "There are 37 cadets waiting outside who wish to speak with you. Dr. Zenth is only allowing visitors in small groups, but they have been gathering since you woke up." Minho looked at Ji-yeon in confusion. She smiled slightly. "I told you." Everything changed. Over the next few days, Minho learned what Ji-yeon meant. The Academy was talking about nothing else. The fight between him and Rixal had been recorded and was being analyzed in every tactical class. But the conversations were not about fighting techniques. Tess was one of the first visitors. The veteran cadet approached the bed hesitantly. Her antennae twitching with what Minho had learned was nervousness. "Cadet Minho," she began, her mandibles clicking. "I wanted to thank you for the accident. You saved my life and Krill's life. Anyone would have done the same." "No." Tess's multifaceted eyes reflected Minho's image 100 times. "We have been discussing this with other cadets. Most species would have calculated the risk and chosen self-preservation. You did not hesitate. And then during your match with Rixal, you did something that should not be possible. I got lucky." "That was not luck. We have studied human physiology since the fight. Do you know what we learned?" She leaned forward. "Humans have no armor plating, no redundant organs, no regenerative capabilities. Your bones are weaker than most species. Your skin tears easily. By every logical measure, you should be one of the weakest species in the galaxy." "We are aware of this," Minho said dryly. "But you do not act weak. You act as if you are unbreakable, even when you are literally broken." Tess's voice carried something like wonder.
"How is that possible?"
Minho thought about how to answer. "On Earth, we have a saying. The human spirit is stronger than human flesh. I guess that's what you saw. After Tess left, others came, small groups of 2 or 3. Cadets from different species, all asking similar questions. They wanted to understand what they had witnessed. How could someone fight effectively while experiencing severe pain? How could someone continue after being injured? Why would someone accept such risk? A soul mare named Ven asked, "Do all humans have this capability? To ignore pain and continue functioning?" "We do not ignore pain," Minho explained. "We feel it completely. But we have learned to function despite it. Earth is not an easy world. Throughout our history, humans have had to endure hardship to survive. We learned to keep going even when everything hurt." "But why?" Ven pressed. "What evolutionary advantage does this provide?" "Maybe none. Or maybe the advantage is that we never give up." When other species would stop, we keep trying. When other species would yield, we keep fighting, not because we are too stupid to know when we are beaten, but because we understand that some things matter more than winning. The conversations continued throughout the week. Minho found himself becoming an informal teacher, explaining human psychology and culture to curious aliens. They wanted to understand the species they had dismissed as fragile. On the 5th day, Rixal came to visit. The Krylock stood in the doorway for a long moment before entering. He looked different somehow, less arrogant than before. He approached the bed and stood silently. "I brought you something," Rixal finally said. He placed a small bundle on the table beside Minho's bed. "Healing herbs from my homeworld. They will not work on your biology, but it is traditional for Krylock's warriors to exchange them after a significant battle." "Thank you." Rixal sat down heavily in the reinforced chair meant for larger species. "I have been thinking about our fight. About what happened. You are a skilled fighter. I was fortunate. No, you were something else." Rixal's claws flexed. "I have fought hundreds of opponents, Minho. Warriors from the most dangerous worlds in the galaxy. I defeated them all. I thought I understood combat." He looked directly at Minho. "But you taught me that I understood nothing. I do not follow. Every opponent I faced before fought to win. You did not fight to win. You fought because yielding was not an option. There is a difference." The Krylock's tail moved in agitation. "When I had you in that vulnerable position, when I could have ended the fight easily, I realized something. You were not afraid of losing. You were not afraid of dying. You were only afraid of quitting." Minho considered this. Quitting would have meant that every human after me would face the same doubt. Someone had to prove we belong here. And you chose to be that someone even if it killed you. Rixal's mandibles clicked slowly. "That is not courage. That is something beyond courage. My species used to have warriors like you, many generations ago. We called them the Unbreaking. They are legends now. Stories we tell young ones. I thought such warriors no longer existed. We all have limits." "Yes, but some refuse to acknowledge those limits until they are proven wrong, and sometimes that refusal changes everything." Rixal stood. "I came to tell you that I was wrong about humans." "About you? I will tell everyone who will listen. Your species deserves respect not because you are strong, but because you are unstoppable." After Rixal left, Jian emerged from where she had been waiting outside. "That was quite a statement from someone who wanted to crush you 2 weeks ago. He is trying to understand. They all are." Jian sat on the edge of the bed. "Minho, you need to know what is happening out there. The fight has become required viewing in 3 different classes. Instructors are using it to teach lessons about determination and psychological warfare. Commander Kale gave a speech about how the definition of strength needs to be broader. That seems like too much attention for one fight. It is not about the fight. It is about what the fight represented." Jian pulled up a data pad and showed him several reports. "Applications to the Academy from human candidates have increased by 300% in the last week. The Galactic Council is discussing expanding human participation in military operations, and other species are starting to study human psychology." Minho read through the reports in silence. He had not intended any of this. He had simply wanted to prove that humans deserve their place. Dr. Zenth entered to check on his healing progress. The veteran doctor scanned him thoroughly before nodding approval. "Your recovery is progressing well. Humans heal slower than most species, but your body is responding to treatment. You will be released in 1 week. Can I ask you something, doctor?" "Of course. What do you think about humans now, after everything that happened?" Dr. Zenth was quiet for a moment, his antennae still. "I think humans are terrifying." Minho blinked in surprise. "Terrifying?" "Yes, not because you are strong or aggressive. You are terrifying because you refuse to accept reality. Every other species understands their limits. When their body is broken, they stop. When the pain becomes too great, they yield. This is logical. This is survival instinct." The doctor's mandibles clicked nervously. "But humans ignore these signals. You continue functioning when you should not be able to. You fight when you should surrender. You survive situations that should kill you. This is not logical. This is not normal. This is terrifying." After the doctor left, Minho lay in bed thinking about that word. Terrifying. He had never thought of humans that way. They had always been the underdogs, the weak species trying to prove themselves. But maybe that was the point. Maybe being weak and refusing to act weak was its own kind of strength. That night, Minho had visitors from the engineering division. They came with questions about human history and stories about people who had accomplished impossible things. They listened with fascination as he told them about marathon runners who finished races on broken bones, about soldiers who carried wounded companions for miles, about explorers who survived in impossible conditions. One of them, a young Solmare, asked the question that everyone seemed to be dancing around. "Are you not afraid of death?" Minho thought about his sister, about the promise he had made. We are afraid. All the time. Fear is part of being human, but we learned a long time ago that being afraid and being stopped by fear are two different things. We feel fear completely and then we act anyway. The Solmare's crystalline structure pulsed with light. That is what we witnessed in your fight. Not fearlessness, but action despite fear. Yes. Then humans are not weak at all. You simply carry your strength in a different place. After they left, Ji-Yun remained behind. She looked at Minho seriously. You know you have changed everything, right? Not just for yourself. For all of us. I just wanted to prove we belong. You did more than that. You proved we are different from every other species here and that our differences make us valuable. She stood to leave. Get some rest. You have a lot of attention coming your way when you are released. Minho settled back into the bed, his healing ribs aching but manageable. Outside the medical bay window he could see the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, and billions of humans who did not know that one fight on a distant space station had changed how the galaxy saw them. He hoped he had done them justice.